Hi, guys. We have a great guest today. We're talking to Rahm Emanuel about what's going on in Chicago and also Trump's peace plan for the Middle East. We hope that you're enjoying this rapid response content that we're creating. Subscribe to the Raging Moderates YouTube channel. Be part of the community. We'd love to see you there. And I'm reading all the comments, and they're like 90% good, which is frankly awesome. So thank you.
Welcome to Raging Moderates. I'm Scott Galloway.
And I'm Jessica Tarlov.
Today, we're joined by former U.S. Ambassador to Japan and former Mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel. Also, you were the President's Chief of Staff, no?
Correct.
Yeah.
The only thing constant in my title is former.
Former? There you go.
Current great guest, though.
All around generally pleasant guy. So President Trump and other world leaders signed a Gaza ceasefire deal in Egypt on Monday, calling it a historic dawn of a new Middle East. The deal comes after Hamas returned the 20 remaining hostages to Israel, while Israel released hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. Emotional reunions are unfolding across the region, from hospitals to Israel to the streets in Gaza. Rahm, give us your take on this ceasefire. What do you think the key elements and players were bringing it together, and how you would outline the kind of the prospects, what this means for the Middle East moving forward?
Well, I think a couple things I'd take a look at here. I do think, and I said it at the time, that the bombing by Bibi Netanyahu of Qatar was a strategic error of grave proportion when you compare it to where Israel stood after the 12-day bombardment of Tehran. And the president, to his credit, seized that opportunity, that vulnerability, to put Bibi right and get him to sign off on something that he politically, strategically did not want to do. The second, given the relationship with the Gulf countries and the larger Arab world, those countries finally realized that this was a diminishing return, and they aligned with the president. And that pressure cooker got both the Netanyahu government and whatever elements left of the Hamas leadership to say yes. But I think actually what's one of the things lost here is that public, both the Palestinians in Gaza and the Israeli public, put pressure on their leaders to finally call this quits. What I do know about the Middle East is this is not the end of a period, but the beginning of something. Now, it can be stillborn and not go anywhere. I don't know whether the White House has the kind of persistence to stay with it, whether Jared Kushner also stays with this. But I think there's a potential to take this somewhere, or it falls apart in the ceasefire there, but the second stage of this doesn't happen. I actually think away from the ball is what's going to go on vis-a-vis Ukraine and Russia. That to me will be a more fascinating, given the leverage the president has, the standing he has now, whether he exercises that to end the conflict there.
Just to follow up, because I was with you, I thought, okay, Israel is sort of 4 for 4, taking out Hezbollah, Iranian airspace, their military victory against Hamas. I mean, and then they screwed up with this strike in Doha in Qatar. That was a bridge too far, a strategic mistake. I now wonder if, in fact, that played a pivotal role here. And that is, I think it's hard to ignore the timeline that they go in and strike in Doha. And the Qataris, I believe, put additional pressure on Hamas because I believe it's logical to believe, wow, the fire is coming to us and we need to end this shit. You don't believe that? I'm wondering now if that expedited, not threatened, the peace process.
No, there's no doubt it expedited, because I think Netanyahu was in an incredibly vulnerable position. I think also the Gulf countries realized an unchecked, untethered, kind of managed Netanyahu was a force that was just too reckless. It was both about Hamas, but also about Netanyahu. Look, step back October 7th in the early days. Israel has dealt with Iran unbelievably convincingly, dealt with Hezbollah, incredible takedown. Syria is in a non-belligerent status. Lebanese government are actually starting to disarm Hezbollah, and they're also taking control of major assets like the port and the airport. Hamas, while is a degraded, if not defeated, is not the force it was on October 7th. And you had countries in the Gulf and the Arab world recognizing not only Israel's military, strategic, and intelligence advantages, its economic advantages, and we're ready to align. The attack on Qatar is, yes, it was an opening, but it was also a strategic mistake of grand proportion to Netanyahu because he didn't want to do what he just did. He did not want to do it. And it was a catalytic converter that turned over both in the Arab world as well as for the United States.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think it's also interesting that it's been reported that President Trump made Bibi Netanyahu call up the Qataris and essentially apologize for that. So he was signaling to the Arab world, like, I'm really trying to make a deal here, and I'm going to force my ally, who definitely doesn't want to make this phone call, to do it.
And you're exactly right, but one other thing, and then he took a photo and released it because he was not going to let Netanyahu
get away with a secret call. Yeah.
That was really the push in the sense of a part of the world where faces plays a very important role.
For Trump, Pixar, it didn't happen. And we're going to talk about Chicago, where he's definitely living that way in terms of filming everything. But I wanted to ask you a political question. You know, I give Trump enormous credit. I found yesterday to just be a moving day from start to finish, crying at all these hostage reunion photos and videos. And I'm seeing a lot of begrudging acceptance on the part of Democrats that Trump was the one to get this done. And there's a news report circulating. It was from September, where Trump had told Netanyahu, I don't want a deal now, that I don't want it to seem like a feather in Harris's cap because she was the candidate at that point. And a lot of people saying Biden could have had this deal, right? Especially because we don't know what phase 2 of this deal actually looks like. Where do you come down on that? And also on the idea that this is a new era of diplomacy or deal making that we're seeing, right? This is a Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, Donald Trump kind of deal, right? Where everyone is in bed with each other and billions of dollars are being exchanged and we're building golf courses and luxury resorts. And we're also getting hostages who have been held in tunnels for 738 days or whatever it is out of captivity, because I'm seeing a lot of leeway, I guess, being given to the idea that maybe this is how we should be doing it versus the traditional, this is how the State Department operates, right? And we don't break protocol and we don't talk to terrorists. I mean, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff sat down alone with Hamas, which I don't think they would have ever let a Biden team member do.
Yeah. There's like 7 questions there. So
Sorry,
let me try to, it's okay. Yeah. I mean, I was complimentary of President Trump, not only here, but earlier in the week. And just on a tactical level, if you want your criticism to be heard, periodically break it up with a compliment. And they deserve recognition. They use the leverage of and the power of the United States, not of Trump, but of the United States, to get something that everybody wanted over 2 years, a ceasefire, the end of the killing not only in Gaza, but the freedom of the hostages. So to me, it's not hard to say Mazel tov, because that is what we wanted. It's just not hard. And 2, look, in this case, and one thing I would say that is to be studied here versus, and again, I don't want to jump to the Russian-Ukrainian front, but when Israel was permitted the space and time and the resources to win a war, different openings happen. Ukraine, in this case, and I think this is a criticism, has been permitted not to lose a war. That's going to be studied for a long time. And the strategic opportunities there are minimal. The strategic opportunities here, being the Middle East, were open because of winning versus not allowed to lose. And I think that's going to inform what happens with President Zelensky and President Trump on Friday. The second part of that is, look, there's you have many tools in your toolboxes. The idea that deal making is just it. As somebody who a lot of people thought diplomat and Rahm Emanuel didn't go together, worked tirelessly at the trilateral between the United States, Japan, and Korea, bringing 3 parties together with a lot of interesting history among the 3, ending up at Camp David with a historic agreement in that effort. So there's a place for tired back and forth work. There's a place for deal making. And there's a place for knowing what your power is, what your vulnerability of the person behind, and when to use that. So the idea that only one model works, you got to look at the players, you got to look at the situation, and you got to figure out what are your levers. But in the end of the day, trust and power and willing to use that plays an important role. And I do think in this case, the president's power is not contained to the geography of the Middle East. We accomplished something that neither China, Russia, or any other power could have done in the Middle East. That power is capital to go spend around the world.
Ram, I just want to, you said something really interesting there that Ukraine's been given permission not to lose the war. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Would a President Emanuel be supportive of the U.S. supporting long-range missile technology for Ukraine such that they could further damage the Russian oil infrastructure? Would you be supportive of greater support that included offensive weaponry to be deployed against Russia's oil infrastructure?
Yes. And the full stop here, here's my assessment. If we're right about Bibi being vulnerable, I don't think people have taken full stock of how vulnerable Putin is. We're on February will be the 4-year anniversary, as the way of October 7th was a 2-year anniversary, 4-year anniversary for a country 10 times the size of the country they attacked, who has not made any progress. They have lost 1 million men, both dead and wounded. Their intelligence operation got Kyiv wrong, the war. They got Syria wrong, and they got the Wagner Group wrong. They have gone from trying to project that they're a superpower to being Xi's pawn and junior partner. They lost Europe. They wanted to stop NATO from growing, and now NATO's on the Finland border with Russia, 800 miles long. And Armenia and Azerbaijani didn't go to Moscow, but they went to the West Wing to sign a peace agreement. Moldova voted to go to EU. As I always say, EU and NATO never moved east. The countries in the east moved west. At every level, when you look at the equity versus losses, Putin is in a horrible position. So I would not only deploy the weapons, I would apply more economic sanctions. And I would say, you've made this choice. You can either abide by the clock here and make a deal that I'm ready to make that has a win for you, or you can have a war of endurance that now is bringing home the pain to your domestic economy. I think at many levels, the White House, and I would say in the past also, miscalculated the vulnerability of Putin. He has made a bet, and the bet is going south on him. And I would now use all the resources, not just weapons. Don't debate it. Don't become a society. Pressure it. Israel was given the opportunity. When you look at Lebanon, you look at Syria, you look at Iran, you look even at Gaza with the horrific killing, to win. Ukraine has been given the opportunity not to lose. That changes strategic. I would flip the script and give Ukraine the opportunity to apply pressure and then be the convener of that table.
I want to talk about Chicago and what's going on there. The Seventh Circuit has blocked Trump's troops from moving into the city of Chicago, though they can remain in Illinois. How long do you think that holds up? What does all of this mean for, safety and policing in the city of Chicago? What are your feelings as a former mayor?
Look, I think two things as somebody who worked on crime all 8 years, and you will continue to always work on it. I think defunding the police is a stupid criminal justice policy, and I think sending in 500 National Guards for a period of 5 weeks is a stupid criminal justice policy. As somebody who visited children in hospital that have been shot, saw way too many yellow ribbons around trees with pictures and balloons about somebody that was killed senselessly over the weekend. This is about putting more police on the street, getting kids, guns, and gangs off the street. And if the White House wanted to, they can go partner. We're going to not spend money on National Guard, but help you recruit, train new officers, 500 that will be permanently in the city year in and year out.
Do you think Brandon Johnson would work with the administration to do something like that?
Look, I think any mayor that wants to see a sustained effort in reducing crime, and I want to say one other thing. I worked to try to get the U.S. Attorney's Office in Chicago to go at, there's 2 to 3% in every city that commit overwhelming 50+% of all the violent crime. Go after them. Prosecute them. Get them out of these neighborhoods. These streets aren't on the city of Chicago, South and West Side, or other cities across the country. They're not a shooting gallery for these gang members. Use the full force of the federal law to get them off the streets. Get the guns they use off the streets. Give these kids opportunities to go to after-school program and a sustained community policing program. We always end up with this false binary choice of either defunding the police, which was a dumb idea, or that somehow 500 National Guard are going to solve a crime problem. They're not going to solve a crime problem. And so to me, what I would say is there's a strategy here. Cities are making progress, but nobody can be complacent or happy with it. Build on that and say to the federal government, here's the bill of goods, be a partner. Put the script back on them. 500 National Guard, if you're sitting around a bunch of tourist attractions downtown, you're not really fighting violent crime in the city of Chicago. Get the gangster disciples and all these other gangs and the hardened members off the streets. That's, to me, and there's a way to partner with a city. Every mayor across the country, big, medium, or small city, would welcome the partnership. That's why the community policing program, having worked on that in the 94 crime bill, worked. Look at violent crime in 1984, a decade before. Look at violent crime in 2004, a decade after the 94 crime bill. I know which one you would take, but build on it. That's what I would do.
Love it.
Rahm Emanuel is the former U.S. ambassador to Japan and mayor of Chicago. Rahm, very much appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Chief of staff to the president.
and father of 3 great kids.
And father of 3 great kids.
Father
there you
of
go.
most important title.
Most important.
There you
Thank
go.
you for joining us.
Thanks, guys.